Hello there, welcome back. So, we'll explore a fairly simple but profound practice today. This is part of what some traditions like Buddhism might call a skeleton meditation, but this is a practice to cultivate the knowing quality, penetrating insight into the nature of ourselves and being or consciousness, reality, and the nature of the body. So we'll just dive right in. Maybe you've watched the first few videos. You've warmed up, prepared, and stretched out the body. You've done some spinal waves or rotations. You've opened up the shoulders or scapulas, rotated the arms, done some twisting, turning of the back. Whatever yoga or stretching or body opening practice that just helps the external body and the tissues and the structure have as much neutrality and openness that we can create in order to be comfortable in our sitting posture. We've taken notes of the neutrality of the posture throughout the body. Maybe as we begin to sit, we would just take a moment to get all of that in place, to listen to the weight and alignment of the body and make sure that we're not slumped forward or holding ourselves up off of our seat. Maybe we take some deep breaths if it's not too stimulating, just to open up the tissues that relate to and facilitate the breath, to open up the rib cage and the diaphragm. Maybe we've even done a little bit of self massage or a little bit of releasing of the fascia in order to facilitate a little bit of the relaxation response. But this is the surface level. And it's a good start, but it does have a little bit of intentionality. And we're going to go further with cultivating listening skill, leading towards this deeper perceptivity, this knowing quality, a direct perception of who and what we are and the nature of the relationship between consciousness and the body and that which lies between. We'll dive a little bit further into the breath in the video, but this will open up the body in a way that allows our chi to start to organize, harmonize, and settle and sync so that we can go a little bit deeper and get a little bit of more, a little bit more juice, a little bit more uh, depth to our practice. So sitting in an upright posture, we might have our hands just together in front of us, or we might have them on our lap. If we're sitting on a chair, we'd probably want to be at least sitting forward on our chair, just a little bit towards the edge of the chair. Maybe with a pillow underneath us so that we're comfortable, but we want to be upright and neutral. We don't want the arms to be cramped too close in or held out in any way that causes any tension in the shoulders. We just want to settle them down. My hands are just placed neutrally on top of my thighs or my knees here. So in the beginning, we'll just pay attention to the surface area of the skin along the head, this area of the top of the skull. We're simply going to pay attention. Just listen, not try to make anything change or force any release to happen. We're simply going to soften any excess tension we feel and soften the way we are paying attention to the surface of the body. Breathing naturally, even just allowing the breath to completely do its own thing. not paying it too much mind. The attention is very softly, as if touching the skin. If this was the skin and this is the mind, we don't want to force our way in and cause it to contract. We are looking to see if we can notice if we're going too fast or with too much intent. If we're trying to make something happen, the body might clench or contract. We want to slowly, softly, with ease, with just enough firmness of our attention to rest firmly, with a bit of attentiveness, alertness, awareness, a wakefulness, a bit of command to our presence and our perception. But we want to not force the awareness in. We want to rest the awareness, as if the weight of our mind is settling of its own accord, as if it has its own substance. And if we stop doing so much stuff and we simply listen to the surface of the skin, first of all around the brow, softening the brow, feeling the skin of the face, the head here begin to, almost as if it's sagging and spreading like a cap. We want to begin to feel the flesh hang off of the scalp, hang off of the bone, as if the skeleton, the skull, as if it is the frame of a tent and the flesh is the tent canvas hanging heavily, or as if it's a wet piece of cloth hanging off of a hook, or a clothing hanger, like a wet piece of clothing hanging on the hanger. We softly pay attention, gently but firmly, resting the attention on the skin around the top of the head, just softly noticing, softening our attention as we listen. It may seem as if the skin begins to sag or become heavy, or maybe we feel as if almost it's like the pores open and the mind or the breath begins to kind of pass through. We only want to move along to the next area just below when we feel that contraction release. So in this area, it's the area we tend to notice the most contraction in the mind. If we were to imagine or visualize something or try to use a lot of intention, there's a sort of subtle vice-like contraction or gripping that occurs. And we want to soften that grip. We don't want a confined mental space. We want the mental space to slowly feather out, expand, soften, and release. We want the mind to become spacious so that the focal point of our attention, wherever it's resting, can soften and penetrate. Just taking our time to rest the awareness on and just below, maybe. On, around, and through the skin, the scalp, And as if it's like a fluid sinking deeper or beginning to penetrate more deeply, we will bring the awareness to the eyebrows, to the eyes, to this next area of the eyes, the ear, and the back of the skull. Softening this band, softening the next band. Again, if we feel like we're moving too fast or the mind tries to shift too quickly, we may feel a bit of contraction. We just move back to softening the place that we were at before it. When we feel it soften, just by listening, emptying ourselves of any intention, feel the skin soften. Maybe we can even use a bit of touch to get the attention in the right place. The type of touch we're using very much mimicking how we want to place the awareness on the body. Soft but firm, gentle but with a confident pressure, knowing the body, simply listening to the sensation with zero intention, zero bias, zero judgment, just a clear awareness. Slowly pouring the awareness inwards. Maybe the awareness feels like it begins to create a transparency of the skin. At first, we're opaque and we're blocking the awareness off, and all of a sudden it softens and the awareness passes through, and the flesh starts to hang or open or feel like it's spreading. We don't get caught up in these sensations. We simply allow the awareness to slowly move to the next area, the jaw, the tongue touching the roof of the mouth just behind the teeth, lips together, jaw relaxed so the teeth just separate. Space around the jaw, the back of the ears, the back of the neck. The mind opening, the attention softening as we listen. We don't want to contract the mind to try to bring it in. We're simply listening, to the releasing and softening in response to the quality of the mind interacting with the body in this way. The attention slowly making its way down across the neck, the skeleton remaining upright, neutral, not trying to move or adjust the body to create this release, not trying to stretch or wiggle around. If we find ourselves using too much intention, we go back to warming up and stretching and opening the body and creating external release until we find enough space and there's enough circulation, enough physical comfort to dive a little deeper. Attention on the flesh of the tongue, the throat, the skin of the neck, softening the flesh, skin around the tops of the shoulders, settling and softening. Just placing our awareness all across the skin. Breath coming in and out naturally with ease. Awareness softly moving across the skin of the arms, softening the flesh of the upper arms, down past the elbows, softening the forearms, softening the hands. Resting the awareness on the skin. If the awareness releases at the skin level and we sink a little bit more deeply towards the underside of the skin and the flesh, then that's fine. Now the area around the collarbone, softening the flesh around the bones. Softening this area of the upper chest, and if we can, spreading the awareness very gently, very slowly around to the back. Soaking the attention into the skin around the torso, around the middle torso, bottom of the ribs. Not trying to dive deeply into the entire body, just resting the mind on the surface of the body or just beneath it, like a hand would rest on the surface skin of water. Able to listen to the flow, the current underneath, but we're not trying to make the body release, make it calm. We're not trying to make our inner waters become still. We're just listening, connecting, and listening. In a gentle but attentive and awake manner. Pouring the awareness down around the surface of the lower abdomen, front and back, softening. Again, when we soften and things start to release of their own accord, there should be a sense of gravity beginning to pull on the weight of the body, the flesh releasing and hanging off of the bones. We may feel that we begin to become pressurized into our seat. Softening the flesh, the skin, all around the waist. Slowly moving around the outside of the hips towards the legs, the upper thighs. Slowly, the attention pouring down as we find release bit by bit. Enjoy it. Find pleasure, contentment, a restfulness of the mind as we find release in the body simply by listening, paying it attention. All the skin, the flesh around the knees, down from the knees, skin, the flesh across the calves. Taking your time, moving back to the space, back to any space really that we have found more release, that it was a bit easier to listen to. Only skipping past an area if it seems much more difficult or causes us to begin to contract and apply attention, then we can move on to a different area. Moving around that space that's more difficult until we find the ability to rest on and penetrate it. Allowing the awareness to flood down around the lower legs, the ankles, and softening the feet as if all of the skin of the body is hanging, like sagging off, being pulled towards the earth. Just gently encouraging the breath if we need to, if we need to pay attention to it, as if again the pores are opening and the breath is passing through the skin. As if we are breathing through the skin. The breath comes in with the inhale, and then back through the skin with the exhale. We can give that a little bit of focus if we need to encourage the process. Now that we're settled from head to toe at the level of the flesh, we begin to, from the bottom up, pay attention to the feet. Soften as if the feet are melting into the ground, not needing to visualize anything, but softening as if the feet are, again, sinking, spreading, opening, the flesh melting off the bones. When we release the flesh enough, any of that nervous system contraction out of the way so that it's not impeding our ability to pay attention to our body, we soak the mind in, allow it to zoom in as we soften even more. We soften the mind, softening the eyes, softening the way we are paying attention as the mind zooms in. There is an opening, a softening, and a zooming in simultaneously. We must achieve to go deeper into the body without causing any intention or contraction to occur. Stepping back with the mind or softening the mind's mental space, that spaciousness increasing. So we are finding space in the body, we're perceiving space, zooming into the space, opening and zooming in to the feet at first. If we can, sensing, allowing the mind to settle in and find its way, just seeing if we can become aware of the bones of the feet. The mind might bring up a visual of the bones, the skeleton, if we need to, and we just soften the mind in response to that. It wants us to know that it knows what it's seeing. That's fine. Our own somatic empathy and somatic memory may trigger a bit of a map of the body, but we continually soften and simply listen to and sense the bones and release the flesh around them until we find, there are the different bones in the feet. It may take a little while to get used to how they feel or get used to sensing them. But as we sense more deeply into the body and release, soften the attention as we go, we begin to rest the mind onto the bones. There is a certain quality of stillness to the bones. The bones tend to not be as full of contraction as the flesh is. The flesh contains a lot of the nervous system, the bones do not. There are some very strong tensile tissues around the bones, but as we soften more and more deeply, we can allow the mind to penetrate the structure of the skeleton and begin to know directly our structure, the quality of the bones. So we soften the mind into the bones of the feet, the ankles, spreading up the lower legs. Might be a little easier to feel the lower leg bones than the feet. Feeling that lower leg bone. Feeling the bone leading up to the knee. As we feel the bone, just relaxing all the flesh around it. Feeling the quality of spaciousness in the body as we go. Even the bones themselves are porous. The bones themselves are more yang, more hard, more upright, and sort of awake and alert in their quality, more clear in their quality than the heaviness and the density of the flesh. So we may notice that, allowing the mind to pour or fill. It's as if the mind now is filling us, like filling a bucket from the bottom up. We don't want to leave any area of the body behind, ideally. Maybe at first we're skipping from part to part, leaving the other parts behind and focusing on the part that we're softening, opening. Eventually, we are flooding and filling the entire body. So up through the knees to the upper leg bones. Softening all the large groups of muscle, flesh on all the skin around the bones, up towards where the hip bones connect to the hips, the pelvic bowl, the tailbone, soaking the mind into the structure, releasing everything around it, finding space. If we need to, very slowly, very gently, sit up into our posture to alleviate any pressure. Breathing naturally, smoothly, deeply. Moving from the hips, the pelvic bone, to the sacrum, the tailbone. Noticing the vertebrae, if we can, one by one almost, but noticing that there is this column of the structure through the lower back and just releasing and allowing a spreading, a sinking and opening of the tissues of the waist, the abdomen, the lower back, without allowing any of the structure to collapse. We want to create more and more space as we go. Releasing opens, the opening spreads, and there should be a sense of filling, maybe stretching, but of course, an aliveness, a filling up as the substance of our attention floods inwards and we listen and release. Slowly paying attention to all the flesh around the spine, releasing and moving deeper, to noticing the spine, releasing upon connection or contact of the attention to every little bit of the structure of the skeleton as we move upwards, meeting the mid spine and the beginning of the rib cage. Allowing our awareness to seep into the rib cage, going along the spine into each of the bones of the ribs. up towards the traps, scapulas. If we need to do a little bit of raising of the arms or moving to bring awareness to the scapulas, noticing that they are separate from the rib cage, that's okay. But ideally, just resting the mind into the bones of the scapulas, the collarbone, the structure of the shoulders, softening all the flesh around these bones, flooding through the shoulder to the upper arm, releasing everything around the bones, down to the elbows, into the forearm, softening all the flesh so it is hanging off of the bones. Softening through to the wrists and the hands, softening the hands where they lay in our lap or on our thighs or knees, softening, letting them be heavy as if they're melting into the surface where they rest. Back up through from the hands to the arms, past the elbow, past the shoulder the way we came, releasing all around and through the shoulders, base of the neck, vertebrae by vertebrae. Not trying to release, remember, softly listening, softly paying attention, taking more time than I am here, if at all necessary, to simply listen, to come in with the attention, to step back with the attention, to find the sweet spot in the firmness and the restfulness, the softness, the openness, and the awakeness and alertness of our attention so that it seeps in, it penetrates inwards while the mind spreads and becomes open. We want this connection of heaven and earth. We want the mind to be grounded and stable in the structure of the body, the focal point of our attention, but yet the mind itself becomes spacious. The quality of the mind, the quality of the attention is vast, open, and spaciousness. Spacious, sorry. So up through the neck, around the neck, we soften into the vertebrae. The awareness seeps in, spending time paying attention to the space of each vertebrae until we feel some level of release. The next one. Some level of release. Up to the back of the head where the neck connects to the skull, around the atlas. Again, softening the throat, the tongue, the jaw. softening around the ears, around the eyes, the cheeks, the eyebrow. Flesh hanging and sagging, but the skull remaining suspended in place as if we have a hook behind the head. Eventually, as we release upward through the structure in this way, we will find more fullness and more stability and more integrity in our structure as the tissues release and begin to open and become more like a suspension bridge, more like connected by the fascia in a suspended, open way. And as the chi sinks through this process and the body opens, as facilitated by our more direct body work and as facilitated by the deepening and more refined qualities of mind through our work with meditation and mental cultivation, we will find the interaction of the mind and body harmonize more and more deeply. And this practice, although simple, will become more and more profound in the way that it affects the mind and body. So, a little longer than I meant to stay there. It's totally fine. We're meant to take our time with this practice. Enjoy, smile as you practice, and soak this awareness into the body like soaking in sunshine, like soaking in a warm bath. Allow things to disperse, spread, open, and for the mind to more deeply sink and penetrate into our being so we can clearly know ourselves and create a harmony of mind and body, which facilitates an awakening and a settling, a harmonizing of the chi, and a refining of the mind in a very deep and profound way. Take care. See you in the next one.